Good afternoon. My name is Sean Sullivan, and this presentation will cover my software test plan for my Disk Information Storage Center, a database management system for CEN 3024, that's Software Development 1 for Valencia College for the summer semester of 2025. Just a quick reminder of the main object of this database. It's going to be a disk. The disk has several different attributes we're going to cover, so I'll try to be as brief as possible. The disk ID will be an integer. That's going to be the primary key once we do move to a standalone database. In the meantime, we'll just use that as part of a hash map, I believe. Manufacturer will be a string, mold will be a string, plastic will be a string, color will be a string. Condition is going to be an integer between 1 and 10, so we'll need to validate that input. Description will be a string, contact name and phone number will also be a string, found at will be a location that's a string. Uh, Whether it's been returned to the owner or sold to a local vendor will be Boolean values, true or false. MSRP is going to be a double, and then the resale value will also be a double, and that will be based on some logic based on the condition of the disk and the MSR multiplied by the MSRP value. Um, Before we move on, Professor, if you could give me some feedback. I know that initially when we're using the command line as the UI, manufacturer, mold, plastic, etc., will need to remain strings, but after watching the testing and good coding practices and refactoring information that we had um, as part of our assignments this week, I believe these could probably be moved to enumerators. That way, when I do create the UI, I'd like to have some sort of drop-down list or something to that effect. Um, and there are tons of manufacturers, mold, plastic variations out there. Excuse me. Uh, but I think if I could narrow them down to the popular ones for the sake of this assignment, would that be a good route? Give me your thoughts. So let's go ahead and move on to string input validation. I'm going to go over all of the validations first for the entries, considering that we'll be receiving them directly from the command line until we get to the actual UI. So string input validation is going to be fairly straightforward. We're going to input a known value as a string. Is the value null? First, we need to check if any of our inputs, this will be a common theme, if any of our inputs are null, then we'll need to return an illegal argument exception and print that message to the user so that they know that they give an illegal argument or an illegal input. And then we'll be checking against a max length um, of different variables depending on whether it's the manufacturer, mold, plastic, color, contact name, or contact phone. I believe I'm going to set the max length to 18 for all of these, considering the manufacturer with the longest name that I can think of is about 18 characters, including white space. So if these values pass, they'll be passed onto the disk constructor, and that'll be a passing validation or test. If not, we'll throw an illegal argument exception and give that message or that feedback to the user. Next, input validation for the disk ID integer. Step one, input a known value, and is the value null? Of course, we need to check for that. If it is not null, then we'll go ahead and notify the user, or we'll check, does the ID already exist in our mock database? If it does, we'll notify the user of the UI disk not added. If it does not already exist, then we'll pass the value to the disk constructor. The disk will be constructed, and that will be considered a pass for that test. All right, input validation for the condition of the disk. This one's got a few different validations it has to go through. First off, is it null? Next, is this an integer value because it has to be an integer? If it's not an integer, we'll throw an illegal argument exception. If it is an integer, is it greater or equal to 1? Because this is, like I said, a 1 through 10 value. If it is not greater than or equal to 1, illegal argument exception thrown again. We let the user know. If it is it less than or equal to 10? If it is not, we will throw an illegal argument exception. And we can obviously pass or fail based on whether or not the input value that we expected to throw any of these exceptions. And then is the value, if we get to this point, it has passed all of its input validations, and we can pass that on to the disk constructor. Data validation for Boolean values. Specifically, is the disk returned or has the disk been sold to a vendor? We input a known value. Is the value null? Again, we have to check that. Throw an illegal argument exception if it is. If it is not, Is the value equal to true or false is really what we need to check. We'll throw an exception with a custom message if it is not a true or false value, letting the user know that that is an illegal argument. If it is, if the known value is true or false, then it will be passed on to the disk constructor and the disk will be created. That will be considered a pass. If it is, the known value is not a true or false, obviously we will be throwing exceptions as expected based on the input. Create a new disk manually. So user inputs disk values. All of the previously stated validations, are they all valid? If no, we'll throw an illegal argument exception with a custom message at whichever point the invalid field was identified, and that will be a pass or fail based on that test criteria. If the user input is a valid attribute field all the way across, we will pass the values to the disk constructor and display the disk added confirmation to the user, which will most likely be a message on the UI saying that disk ID, etc. will be added. Next, create a new disk record from files, so most likely a bulk entry. So first we're going to input a known file path, and we will get one of these expected outputs based on whether or not the path is correct or incorrect. So first, is the file path valid? If it's not, we will throw an IO exception and we'll catch that and notify the user of such. If it is a valid file path, we will read the first line of the file. Does the line contain the correct number of attributes, first of all? If it does not, then we will output that the line was skipped to the UI so that we notify the user. If it does contain the correct number of attributes, we will pass those arguments to the disk constructor. They will be validated by the disk constructor through all of the tests that we previously mentioned. If any of those fail, we'll throw an illegal argument exception, notify the user with a custom message in the UI. If they all pass, we will then we will check to see if the disk ID already exists. If it does, we will output the disk ID already exists to the user and that the line will be skipped. If it does not, we will output that the disk has been added and then continue on through those lines as needed. Obviously, depending on the known file path. Set shut off again. Whether or not the file path is correct, we'll know where this decision tree will lead to, and whether or not the file information is valid or not, we will know where this decision tree will lead to. Just a quick note, I know that we've covered creating tests or test-based development. Because this is so simple, I believe that I'll probably just attempt my best at branch coverage. So this is kind of my thought process is working through that branch coverage for all potential outcomes throughout the program and all methods being used. Next, print all disks to the UI. We're going to request print of the known database list. Did we give it an empty database? If we did, it should output database empty. If we did not, no, all the disks should print to the UI, and we should expect to see all of the disks that we know are in the known database to be printed out. If all the disks did print out, it's a pass. If they did not, it's a fail. Next, print return disks to the UI. We'll request to print from the MockDB strictly the return disks. If we know that the MockDB has return disks, we will go down the decision branch. If the database is empty, we'll output that the database is empty. Does the known database, contain return disks? If not, we should expect to have no return disks in the database. If it does contain return disks, we should see them printed out to the UI. If all of the expected disks are printed out to the UI, that is a pass. If they are not, that will be a fail. Next, print sold disks, very similar to printing the return disk. We're going through all of the same logic in the interest of time. I will not cover all of it again, but database empty, not sold, or none sold. If there are that have been sold, we print that to the interface. If all of the expected disks are printed, that's a pass. If they are not, it is a fail. Update the status of disks sold or disk returned. This is just accessing our setters and getters, but First, we'll input the disk ID to update of a known disk that is in or is not in the database. If the disk does exist, we'll go down this decision tree. If it does not, we'll output that the disk does not exist. If it does exist, we'll input the updated status of true because I will set this as default false in my constructor. Print the disk information to the UI. If the printed information does reflect that change in true or false, it is a pass. If it does not, that is a fail. Update contact information, specifically contact name or contact phone for the disk. First, we'll input the disk ID to update. We will know whether or not it exists. It will be a known good or known bad based on the test we were trying to complete. So if it is a known bad or does not exist, it should output the disk does not exist. If it does exist in the mock database, then we should expect to be able to input up the updated information and print the information to the UI. If the printed information does not reflect the updated information for the contact phone or contact name, it will be a fail. If it does reflect that update, it will be a pass. Next, I bit off more than I could chew by adding in all these features, I tell you, but input or search the disk record by contact phone. So we'll input a contact phone known to exist in the MockDB. I chose to do a specific one. We can also put one in that we know not to exist so that we can cover all of our branches. First off, if it does exist or does not exist, or if it does exist, I'm sorry, we will first check to make sure that the length of the phone number entered is 10 because without dashes or spaces, that is the length of a US phone number. We're going to contain this to the US, and one day if we ever were to scale outward, we can consider other phone configurations. But is the entry length 10? If not, we'll throw in a legal argument exception, and that will be a pass if we know that it is not the correct length. If it is the correct length, we'll go down this decision tree, display the disk information for related contact phone number. Did the corresponding disk print to the UI? If it did, that's a pass. If it did not, that is a fail. Next, calculate the total value of returned disks. So this will be the MSRP of all of the disks in the database added together to create an entire, or that specifically the ones that have been returned to create a value so that you can tell all your buddies how much money you've saved them. So we're going to request the total return value from the mock database. That information will immediately be displayed to the UI. All of the logic or calculation will be done in the background unbeknownst to the user. If it is a known database, we know the value of this particular attribute. If the value is correct, that is a pass. If it is incorrect, that is a fail. Next, total revenue from sold disk. This is a very similar scenario. We'll have a known total revenue in a mock database. We will request that known total revenue, display it to the UI. If the correct one is displayed, that is a pass. If it is not displayed correctly or is the incorrect amount, that is a fail. Lastly, in all of our CRUD, we get to the delete, remove disk record from the database. First, we're going to enter a known disk ID to be removed. If we chose one that does exist, then we will go down this decision tree. If we chose one that did not exist, to verify that this exception will be thrown, we'll notify the user that the disk does not exist via the UI. If it does exist, we'll remove the disk with the corresponding ID from the database, and then we will print a list of all disks in the database to verify that this disk has been removed. If our printed list reflects that it has been removed, that is a pass. If it does not reflect that it has been removed, that is a fail. And that is my presentation. I would like to, when we move further down, start thinking in the terms of test-driven development. It was very interesting to see that approach. So, Professor, I hope that that's something we get to cover in future lessons. But if you have any questions or any comments, any feedback, please feel free to reach out to me at any time. Thank you. Have a great day.